Looks simple, doesn't it? It's just some cloth hanging between two trees, or in this case, a tree and my fence. But you have to insulate it, you have to hang it right, you got to choose your suspension, you got to learn to use a tarp. You got to decide if you're going to use a pad or under quilts or a poncho liner, or just try to sleep in it with nothing at all. Are you going to use your old sleeping bag? Are you going to use that in quilt mode? Are you going to get a top quilt? You're going to get a full length under quilt, or are you going to get a partial? You're going to use synthetic or down? You're just going to use pads. You're going to use closed cell foam, or you're going to use something that's inflatable or insulated. You're going to get a really wide pad or a thin pad. You're going to use straps, or you're going to use tree straps with whoopee slings. You're going to use a UCR. Maybe you'll tie a Beckett hitch. Maybe you'll just go with straps and buckles. Could use daisy chain. There's a lot of options. That's why we're going to talk about the hammock learning curve, because there's a curve to it. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit more time. I don't want to break your heart, but I'm just trying to be honest here. A lot of times we don't really want to hear that, do we? We want somebody to go, oh yeah, just hang it up, it's going to be easy. But no. So if you're interested in me talking a little truth to you, then watch this video. If not, it's just hanging there. Look at it. And lately on places like hammock forums and even on my own YouTube channel, I see people struggling with their hammock. They want to get it all done in a week. Ain't gonna happen unless you're very intuitive and lucky. Then maybe you're just a person that, you know, that is satisfied a little easier. But there's so many things to it. So we're just gonna do a little breakdown on some of the things that you may face in your hammock quest. Some of them might be a little heartbreaking, and some of you might go, Shug, I'm so excited. I'm ready to dive in and get this thing going. Well, let's just say you want to learn to play guitar. And I remember seeing those ads that said, learn to play guitar in 3 days. Well, you can't learn to play guitar in 3 days. You may be able to learn to make a G chord. So a lot of times, depending on your personality, and I'm not saying one is better than the other, I like, let's just say I kind of abhor, I kind of detest learning curves, but I'm kind of drawn to them. Like a unicycle, not going to learn in a day. Takes a while. Learning an instrument takes a little while to get slightly proficient. But right now, I'm trying to learn how to pull the perfect espresso shot. I'm learning new terms like dose and extraction and infusion and a lot of stuff in grams and a 1-to-1 ratio and a 1-to-2 ratio in terms like lungo and ristretto and double espresso and a single espresso and on and on and on. And I found out how difficult it is to pull a single espresso shot, and I'm really enjoying the journey. It's going to take a while. So this is kind of like that. So if you like a process, let's talk about it. And I want to remind you just to be patient, and once in a while you'll get frustrated. Marcy! And you just need to walk away. I don't know where I'm going. I'm walking away. Then after you've had a little time away, come back and you look at it with different eyes. I mean, it's the same eyes that are in your head, but your perspective will change, and you'll take a breath and you'll center yourself and realize that you only get to be new at something once. So enjoy this journey. I am talking about camping hammocks here. I'm talking about bringing your hammock, car camping, backpacking, camping somehow, where you're going to hang it between trees and sleep overnight or 2 or 3. And you're just one of those people who likes to hang your hammock out, man, and you're mocking, and you're just going to hang out for a few hours in the park, chilling. You don't have any insulation. You're not putting a pad in. You're not putting an underquilt in. They usually don't have a bug net. They're usually a double wide hammock, and you're just taking it out to the park or somewhere to hang out, relax with friends, listen to music, try to do your homework, try to get a little close, whatever that may be. I'm not talking about that process here. I'm talking about taking your hammock out, camping and sleeping overnight. That's what this is about. That's where the difficulty comes in, and that's where you're going to notice, like, this ain't as easy as I thought it was going to be. What length hammock? They come in all kind of lengths. Eventually it'll come up with what material do you want? Do you want a bug net or not? Does it come with suspension? Now, how do I hang it? There's actually a lot more to hanging a hammock than you would think for camping purposes. Optimally, 15 to 17 feet. Some people would say 12 to 15 feet, but then again, that depends on if you have a 9-foot, a 10-foot, an 11-foot, a 12-foot, or a 13-foot hammock, or a bridge hammock. So that goes out the window. So that's just gonna be something you're gonna have to try to do. Then there is the angle of the suspension. In the hammock world, we always recommend kind of a 30-degree hang. So if you put your hand out like that and just put a hand against it, that's about 30 degrees. I normally hang my straps to a tree about as high as my head, but I'm going to have to go up or down a little bit depending on the distance of those trees. All these are going to come into play. This is something you'll deal with. Make it fun and enjoy it. Don't let it drive you nuts. I don't know I'm going to think of that. Well, then you got to find the sweet spot in your hammock. Now, some hammocks like this War Bonnet, I always hang, and this is recommended by War Bonnet and works with most hammocks, hanging your foot end higher. Now, I've got a video on properly hanging a hammock. If you'll just look up here, you know, I'm going to be pointing up here a lot. There'll be links to videos as I talk about things. For the War Bonnet in a lot of hammocks, I like to hang the foot end of the hammock, meaning where my feet are in the hammock, closer to the tree than I do on the head end, because that gets me down to an angle and puts me down in a spot that I call the sweet spot and is more comfortable for me. Sweet spot is my confirmation name. You know, there's some people that are really good at getting the cheapest hammock, throwing their sleeping bag in, using it as and top quilt motor as a sleeping bag, throwing a pad in, done. Grab an old tarp or use a tarp from somewhere like the Home Depot, a nice 10, 11 foot blue tarp. They're happy with that. They don't mind toting it. Done. That might be you. Now others like me, I like trying different things out to finally find what works for me. So that is part of the hammock learning curve. May drive you crazy, may not. Some of you might find you get a cheap suspension. Your tree straps or your straps might be nylon rather than polyester. Polyester straps don't stretch. Now they will stretch just a little bit, everything will. If you hang your hammock and it's at the perfect height and everything, like I'm sitting in this one right now, when you get in it, it will probably stretch down. If it stretches down to the ground, you may want to look at getting polyester straps. Next is going to be some of you are going to try to sleep in it in your sleeping bag in 70 degree or less weather, and you're going to find yourself getting cold in the middle of the night, because when you lay in a sleeping bag in a hammock, it is compressing that down underneath you, so you're losing a lot of insulation. You do what you want to do, but at some point you're going to have to insulate this hammock if you're camping overnight. Any old camping pad. I've got some videos on all that right up here. Just look at that little box, click on it, and there'll be my playlist on pads in a hammock, whether it's a double layered hammock, which is another thing you'll have to consider when you get into hammocks. Single or double layer. Do I want wide? Do I want to, like most of my hammocks, 60 inches wide, or do I want a really wide hammock? Meaning I may have to have some floppy fabric. A lot of things. But do yourself a favor and eventually you'll probably invest in an underquilt. I'm sitting on mine right now, which is a down or synthetic quilt that hangs underneath your hammock, or just throw pads in. But the hammock should be joyful. It should not cause you stress. It should not make your buttocks so tight that you can't walk without bending your knees. Enjoy it. Let it flow, baby. But if you're gonna camp out in a hammock overnight, you're going to have to get a tarp. Tarping is its own art. A lot of you, if you come from tents, might not have ever rigged a tarp. So rigging a hammock tarp has a lot of options. Do you want to run your guy lines, the lines off the top of your tarp, which is your ridge line right here? Do you want two separate ones? Do you want to just tie a line between two trees and flop your tarp over it? There's a thing called a continuous ridge line now. Do you want a tarp made out of DCF, or what they used to call Cuban fiber? It's expensive. It's light, it's translucent, it's expensive. Do you want sil nylon? This is sil nylon. Pretty tough. It absorbs a little bit of water. It's waterproof. It's strong, and it's pretty inexpensive. There's sil poly now too. Sil poly is a bit like this. Doesn't absorb as much water. It's a little slipperier. You're going to want doors on your tarp. How long do you want your tarp? For an 11-foot hammock like I'm sitting in here, I use an 11-foot tarp. Some people prefer to go with a 12-foot tarp. But then your hang can get weird if you're in tight trees, but it's not the end of the world. But center your hammock under your tarp. Video right up there. And do you want doors on the end? How wide do you want the tarp? Do you want it 6 feet wide? Do you want it 10 feet from side to side? How much coverage do you want? These are other things you're gonna have to deal with. Enjoy it, it's fun. Tarps are your shelter out there. You're gonna be living the tarp life. It's not like being all zipped up in a tent. You're gonna have to get used to that. Some people feel a lack of privacy. You'll get used to it. A lot of people feel exposed. I personally love it because I can see the woods. So That is something you're going to have to deal with. It's something you're going to have to practice. It's something that you're going to have to get used to. Pitching in the wind, in the rain. There is no guarantees in camping and backpacking. You're not in control. You're in control as much as you think you can be with what you have with you, but nature, Mother Nature, she's sassy. She's going to dictate what happens on the trip. So be ready to improvise and roll with it and have fun with it and enjoy handling that. And remember, the worst trips make the best stories. Okay, are you kind of feeling bummed out now? Were you thinking about trying hammocks, and now that I brought this up and you really don't want to try it at all? That's perfectly fine. If it frustrates you, if you're having a hard time with it, if it is not intuitive, you may find it expensive because hammocking is modular. You can do it on the cheap. You can go to Amazon and get a hammock for under $30. You can find your old sleeping bag and throw it in there. If you got a sleeping bag, you probably have a camping pad, closed cell foam, anything. Put it in there, rig up a cheap tarp, use whatever you can, and you're hammock camping. All right? If you want quality gear, yes, it's going to cost you a little bit, but think about your first investment into camping or backpacking or boating or fishing or golf or tennis. Any good hobby, any good thing you get into, gaming, you had to buy the console, you had to have a TV or the computer, you have to get the disc. Everything takes a little bit of investment, and there's an end to that investment. That's just up to you if you just want to, you know, keep buying stuff. Most hammockers don't have just one. A lot of people have up to 10. Some people just have 3. Some people have 2. Some people stick with 1. That's up to you. That's your personality. Sitting here talking about it, I'm wondering why I even got into it, but I will tell you why. My backpacking was at a stale place, and really I just wanted to have a coffee in the morning in a relaxed position. And that led me to really exploring hammocks. I got into it. It came at a time in my life when I was really looking to kind of sink myself into something, and it reinvigorated my backpacking. For some of you, you're going to get into it, and it's going to frustrate you so much you might not want to go backpacking. So go back to your tent. The important thing is that you continue to go backpacking or camping or car camping or however it is you like to do it. What's going to happen when a lot of people are new, they're going to go in their garage or their basement or somewhere and hang their hammocks, and they're really in too tight of a space. So they're not getting an optimal hang to start with. And you know, you're going to deal with things. You're going to find you're getting like calf ridge. Calf ridge is where there's this ridge right down the middle of your hammock, kind of digging into the back of your knee. I have a video on some options to get rid of that. A lot of times you can fix that with the proper hang. So that's why you need to get outside between 2 trees or a fence or somewhere where you can get about 15, 17 feet, 13 feet, and get in there and try to get the right hang. Then you're going to try to sleep in it in your backyard, and that'll drive you crazy because you'll hear dogs, airplanes, traffic noise, neighbors, all kind of night sounds. It's cool because you should know what's going on in your neighborhood at night, but the birds will be chirping at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. That's not that bad when you're out backpacking, but in your backyard, it's weird. People are starting to go to work, you're hearing all kind of morning noise, and it's too easy to bail out and go home, so you'll never commit. You gotta go on a camping trip and commit to being out there, walk a little bit, get tired, get in that hammock, enjoy that learning curve, enjoy that learning curve. That said, on the other hand, you might nail it the first time. I think by my 3rd trip, I was pretty satisfied. Figured out how to stay warm. That was the biggest issue for me because I made my own underquilts and just didn't have them rigged right. And it was cold weather, and I was kind of having wind come through the end of the tarp. So I added some doors to my tarp, and I made an underquilt protector, and that helped to keep the wind from robbing the heat I had built up in my underquilt. So yeah, even me shook. I didn't get it right the first time, or the second, maybe the 3rd, definitely by the 7th. And I'm continuing to learn all the time. Well, I'm just going to thank you for watching. I'm going to say, woo, buddy. All secure in Sector 7. Hey, I don't want to sound like a pitch man or anything, but I do have some of my hammock paintings and the prints back in my Etsy shop. It's stocked, so there's a link below in the description box below this video. All of you that have procured a few, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Just to know that you have one of my prints hanging in your house. Okay. I didn't think this was going to be easier.